So basically, from the top, I started doing these video chat series kind of as a little bit of a satire of the whole lockdown scenario, and I figured it was a good opportunity to connect with more people than I typically would in a traditional podcast format, and then also I wanted to use it to really discuss the impacts of COVID-19 on the real estate market, and how we've seen different things change. And I want to apply sort of as many different lenses as I can to this new set of challenges as possible, so we can try to work together to solve the problems, I suppose, which seems to be the general theme that I'm catching. So if possible, first I wanted to say thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And if possible, if you could just do a quick introduction of who you are, what you do, and how things have changed for you, let's say, since the beginning of the year.
For sure. Well, my name is Anson Kwok. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Pinnacle International. And I've been with Pinnacle for over the last 12 years. So I started when the recession happened in 2008. So for me, it's kind of been pretty strong, obviously the last 10 years. And this is kind of a new switch to how life is. But for me, I guess because I've experienced 2008, to me, this is quite the positive for it. There's obviously an opportunity to retool, probably for the first time since I joined in 2008, of how we do things. Because reality is we never really had to change in the industry on how to do things. So we've been pretty fortunate. My day-to-day has been quite a little bit different. Obviously, it looks, even though I'm in sales and marketing, I actually deal a lot with development, with our property management team and with our construction team. So I'm used to being kind of have my hands into a lot of different things, but obviously from a working from home point of view, there's obviously a lot more phone calls versus people able to grab me from walking down the hallway or going back to my office. So I think those things are kind of the daily changes. And obviously a big thing for me as well is that we have 4 active construction sites. So on a typical week, I'd probably try to get out there at least one afternoon and try to walk the site, and whether it's the parking lots or looking at suite layouts and looking how things go. Obviously, since it started, I haven't proceeded out onto the site just to adding an extra body onto the site is not always the greatest idea. Obviously, they're changing their protocols on site, and I just want to make sure that we keep that construction team safe. But that definitely has changed kind of how we do things. It's been also unique spending a lot of time on virtual meetings with the city, which is great.
Yeah.
I think it's more efficient for them, and so it's been pretty helpful actually.
Yeah, I've actually heard pretty mixed
But
reviews on. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, please go ahead.
I've heard from a lot of people that there's almost like an increase in efficiency as a result of not having to coordinate all the logistics of consultants, engineers, et cetera, throughout the development process. Have you found that as well?
Yeah, I definitely think it's actually improved. I think efficiency has been pretty drastic, because I think most of coordinating meetings between consultants and the city, a lot of it has to do with travel time. So whereas in the virtual world you could actually have back-to-back meetings and have no conflicts. A lot of people put a lot of buffers into their calendars. So I think there is a lot more efficiencies for us, and I think it's been helpful, I think, in that sense, because just the general coordination of 5 consultants to interact with each other, it's not that easy in a everyday world. And now in the virtual world, it's pretty easy to set the calendar up and create that. And not to mention, nowadays, even if you're not on video, you can actually call in pretty easily, versus maybe it was a little less socially acceptable to call into a meeting of a whole bunch of consultants. In
Yeah.
fact, I don't think that wouldn't have flown too well in the meeting room. And now it's not uncommon. So I think it's a great way to kind of increase the efficiency. Obviously, it takes a lot of traffic off the roads, actually, because even for our industry alone, all the going to and from meetings takes up a lot of cars. You might be one consultant, might be 3 consultants from the same firm, but quite often they were driving 3 different cars because they were going elsewhere after.
Yeah.
So, there's definitely benefits for sure. It's just changing the game that I think probably needed to be changed. It just
Yeah.
This is the time to kind of force us to change.
Yeah. Do you think it'll be a lasting change?
I think there is. I think there's definitely a lot of things are more socially acceptable. So I think hey, I have a conflict, I can't make it there, but I can call in.
Yeah.
Now that pretty much every conference room has the technology, and depending on what platform you're on, there's obviously some that are more secure than others. But I think people have all worked on various platforms now,
Hmm.
which makes it a lot more acceptable. And I think that's maybe not a bad way for us to. I mean, I think there's gonna be that transition anyways for the rest of the year,
Yeah.
where municipalities and different companies have taken different initiatives, and you obviously will see less face-to-face meetings from different organizations. So um, in some ways it's probably a little bit healthier way, because obviously you talk to a lot of consultants. They some of them are the entire day just going from meeting to meeting,
Yeah.
commuting, and never actually being able to get back to their office and actually work on your file.
Yeah.
So it's a change for sure.
Yeah. I have I guess a curiosity, and maybe we can use this to pivot to sort of the macro element of that question. But do you think that this poses a threat to? I've heard a lot of prominent economists talking about how this could really change the nature of the central business district, and obviously, given the understanding that urbanization, employment is a big component of convincing people to live in an urban area, or one of the big value propositions. Do you personally, or based on the research and information that you're consuming, think that there's actually a credible threat to the notion of a central business district as a result of this, like a financial core?
No, I think I think that's a great question. I think the world actually, I think the general statement, I would say everyone's kind of looking at their businesses differently, but I do think there's going to be some balances. I think we
Yeah.
switched to a lot of new open concept offices where it's really one big long countertop with 20 people with headphones on. Obviously now in the new world you probably won't see that anymore. So I think I think that's important. That's going to probably change to some of the older style cubicle, larger format um, office spaces. So I feel like there's going to be that balance and that recalibration. I think there are still some companies that excel a lot better in person, in terms of collaboration and so forth, versus completely on digital. But I think with this experience, you also see the other side. I think it's very common that a lot of people wanted to work from home,
Hmm.
and with this experience, maybe it doesn't sound as good. Like I always compare it to um, when you come out of university, you're like, oh, that's a great job. You get to travel so much on this work,
Yeah.
on your new job, and then they travel for like 6 months, and like it really isn't that great,
No.
And I think work at home is kind of a similar concept where you're like,
Yeah.
hey, I kind of like the idea of being able to grab a coffee, walk to work, kind of relax a bit before I get back home. Whereas now it's kind of like difference between work you and home you is quite minimal.
Yeah. I guess it's that grass is greener phenomena, right?
For sure, but I think offices are, because we operate in an office building, you see some people are, thinking about shifting to more of a work at home program. But then there's companies that are like, I think I need more space because I've kind of packed people in too
Yeah.
tightly in terms of, you had everyone every 3 feet, in terms of deck space. So,
Yeah.
I think the world is going to balance a bit,
Yeah. That's an
and
interesting note,
security is going to be
actually.
a huge thing.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it was Ben Tal who had posted some information on that there could actually be a net positive demand on office space, because if social distancing becomes a sort of permanent policy, then if people are going to be working in collaborative workplaces, there needs to be more square footage per individual, right? So even though some companies might suffer economically and have to exit completely, or some might elect to go completely work from home, the ones that stay in the offices will need larger offices. So I thought that was pretty interesting concept anyway.
Well, I think that is going to happen. I think there's still going to be a lot of offices that will maintain their space just because of their business and trying to keep their business secure. Obviously, there's we've all had to kind of work at home pretty quickly, so maybe there's not as many targets as typical, but I mean, I do think there's a lot more infrastructure and a lot more planning that needs to go into making sure that a lot of these banks and consultancy firms and so forth are actually 100% secure and not targets for all the other fun games that occur when everyone's working from home. So I mean, there is a component where some for sure there are obviously exceptions and people that need to that can definitely work from home easily. It's just we have an entire network everywhere of support staff, admin staff, all those components, that really is not that easy to work from home. And I think that's still going to be still important in grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I would agree. On the sales side of residential development, how are things looking? Like, I think that's a big question that a lot of people are eager, and I know you're pretty active, at least attentive on Twitter. So I'm sure you've seen some of these dialogues, and I'm having a hard time deciding whether or not I agree with either the bear or the bull thesis in these scenarios. But is there any anecdotal evidence that you can give me of things going in either direction, or is absorption still pretty strong? Does it feel like a risk factor right now? Like, I know that some of these buildings that have sold, early this year, people are speculating that even in a sideways environment, there's risk that those purchasers aren't going to want to close in X years. But I think also discounting for how much longer construction could take as a result of the delays from social distancing. I guess high level, what's your outlook there?
Well, I mean, for me, I just from obviously being pretty active in the industry, it's it's so different. I think I think people's natural instincts is that we're kind of in that typical recession mode, and this is what's happening in a recession, but it's not a recession at all. I mean, I think in a recession period, when Canada's weak, other countries are strong. This is kind of a scenario where everyone's kind of in the same boat. So to me, I kind of look at more like you're on a street, and it's that stoplight that never actually turns red, and this is the first time it's actually turned red.
Right.
And everyone's kind of like, oh, it turned red, and everyone had to stop and pause. But like over the last 3 weeks, I've seen a lot of, we've gotten a lot more inquiries. It's been a lot more active. We're writing deals. So for me, I think people are now crossing the street again. But for probably the last 10 years, it's kind of been a herd mentality where, it never turns red. So just keep on going, and everyone keeps on crossing the street. And to me, it's, I think there's some benefits to it. I think we are, I think, going to start seeing some pricing that's probably a little bit more accurate to the location in the city.
Right.
So that people can help, to help purchasers make that decision. I think for a little while, kind of all projects, no matter where they were between 416 or 905, kind of became, it almost became the same price.
Right.
And people couldn't really differentiate, what was a good location, what was a bad location. So yeah, I do think that a location, commands the A prices, and C or D locations should be getting C and D pricing, not everything being the same. And I think that's one thing I see as a positive, because I think that actually helps the decision making process for the purchaser, to find the product that suits them, not just a fancy name or a great brochure, or
or just buy because they have to because of scarcity.
Yeah, like it's those are things that are drivers, and that's like that kind of that herd mentality of saying just crossing the street. Well, everyone else is crossing, so I got to cross too.
Yeah.
And now you got more people kind of just watching people cross.
Yeah.
There are going to be people that are going to be a little bit hesitant, but I've definitely seen a strong position for people to start crossing the street again, knowing that whether it's something that you move in quickly, or some of these projects are 4 or 5 years away, so there's definitely they feel quite comfortable purchasing now.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the other piece that a lot of people don't realize. Like anything that's closing today had sold, 5 years ago, probably, depending on the scale of the project. Like, there's a lot of value baked in there. Um, on that note about location, and this is just a curiosity. The fact that prices seemed pretty much they did seem kind of independent of location. It was sort of just like you baked in the speculation, and people were just buying what they could. Do you think that much of that has to do with or is it a reflection of the fact that a lot of purchasers are actually not from the city and perhaps not even from Canada, like that, foreign investment that might just be out of touch with the the neighborhood differences within the city?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that has a lot to do with that because I think even for me as someone that observes a lot of marketing out there. I mean, I'll see things that almost everything is 5 minutes away from Ryerson or 5 minutes away from University of Toronto. But you know, I know that even if I was being transported, 5 minutes might be a long time. And there's so obviously a tough component in that because it's a competitive market. There's a lot of projects out there. So people use a lot of big streets and people, oh, I recognize that street. But in the day, a lot of people are also purchasing because of wanting to get, an investment vehicle. Maybe location's not as important for them. And kind of working through that, which is not uncommon. It's just, hey, the price sounds right. Location sounds good. It's a builder I'm aware of. And I just need to, it's more of a play for future equity versus, really getting things through.
Right. Okay. On that note, then, how much risk would you say? I think a lot of people are really analyzing, like, especially the ghost hotels, the Airbnb stuff. Kind of, I think there was an anticipated supply shock, and it wasn't as bad as most anticipated. But if the resale market starts pulling down on values, does that pose a relatively big threat, or like is that sort of isolated to the resale market because of the long run sales cycle of trying to, like, the projects that you guys are working on? Like you said, you're probably 5-10 years on some of these phases.
For sure. I mean, I think ghost hotels and so forth, I think it's interesting because obviously there's been about 7,500 units that went back out onto the market that
Yeah.
was through the Airbnb that kind of just changed the world of both rentals and resale. But I mean, as you look at the statistics, it's really just certain buildings. I mean, I know for ourselves, all our buildings don't allow for Airbnb.
Right.
So, pretty much all our projects are kind of that are built are kind of resilient to that just because that wasn't actually a thing that we allowed in our condo docs, and it's not something that we allow now in our future projects. So, if you looked at a lot of units, I think most of them were in 4 main buildings in downtown Toronto that kind of all of a sudden everyone was in a panic. And not to mention, that's a very tough resale market when people don't allow you to go into their units.
Yeah.
It's a very different, I know sounds like a very little thing, but selling a resale unit based on some pictures is a very difficult thing. So I think that's where you're gonna have to look at that red light I was talking about.
Yeah.
Just, end of the day, people still have that property. It's just how fast they wanted to unload it. But really, it wasn't a great time to sell when, there's 125 listings for the same building, all based on pictures because you weren't allowed in the building.
Yeah.
So
it's
I think that
almost,
kind of changes the thought process.
yeah, so it's almost like just as likely to look like an anomaly in hindsight as it would be like it could look like a trend today, right? Because eventually, like, that supply will exhaust and things should go back to normal, right? Or I guess then the whole discussion of the looming macro threat, kind of gets in there, and I mean that's something we don't really need to discuss. I think everybody's sort of aware of all, the Canadian debt scenario. Immigration, actually, the numbers seem to be strong still, so. I mean,
Yeah, I think once the border opens up, I think you'll see a lot of things change as well. It's just
yeah,
right now, I think everyone's just on a speculation game. But I mean, for me, there's a lot. The way to look the way I look at it, it's really for us to do a kind of a, you know, a reset and kind of change how we kind of do business. So,
Right.
we've always been committed kind of to the same kind of way of doing business, and now we've finally been able to, take a pause and kind of reflect and kind of change kind of our strategies, and knowing that I don't think the industry is going to be 100%, obviously it will not be the same. It won't,
Yeah.
we just got to be able to plan for the new normal. So to me, it's like a positive situation, because on a regular day-to-day work life, you would never be able to overhaul your entire program or your entire system. And I would say in the last 2 months, I think there's been a lot of, speaking for myself and my team, we spent a lot of time kind of redoing how we do things, which
Yeah.
is, when things are going quite well, you don't usually ever do that. So for us, as simple as, our website,
Yeah.
our entire, website was kind of pushing people to go to our sales centers. We wouldn't, there's some things we might not show everything on the website, but now we got to show everything on the website.
Yeah.
Even to a point where we got to start, we've added a price search on our website, just so that people can kind of help themselves gauge what, where they're at. And also all the images of all my model suites and all my sales centers, they all got shifted to my website, which I typically in the past, you would come to my sales center to see it. But
Right.
knowing that the new normal, maybe 50% of people would still come back to sales centers, and what we've been doing the last 2 months is probably going to be the new normal for the other 50%. So,
Yeah.
we've been working, I don't think any of the efforts have been lost. I think we've only increased our channels, which is it's a really kind of, in some ways, a positive thing in terms of looking at sales,
Yeah.
because a lot of it was done kind of the same way, same method, same playbook. A lot of
Yeah.
people are doing the same thing, and now it's time to kind of reinvent ourselves, really utilize your strengths,
Yeah.
and get back on the marketplace. But I think that's a tough change for a lot of people, because a lot of people have been using the same playbook for a long time, and I think those are the people that are going to be the most challenged, because I don't think things are going to be exactly where they were in February.
Yeah. I would agree. I think that, we get often criticized as being a dinosaur industry, and I think that there's, an element of truth to that. And I would agree. Like, it sounds like you guys have had that agility and malleability to change the processes pretty promptly, which is a reflection of the good work that you're doing. But I think that there are a lot of groups out there that, you know, aren't might not have that capability, and might not even be seeing things for what they are. Like, that you might have a reduction in like, you're never going to have those big launch parties anymore, at least for the foreseeable future, right? And I think that a lot of that stuff, like, I think we're going down a road where an industry like real estate that was so ripe for disruption but also so resistant to it is just in the snap of a finger forced to adapt by using some of this stuff. Do
No, I think
you
that's fair.
Sorry, yeah, do you guys find yourself, like, are you exploring things like VR and all that yet, or?
Yeah, I mean, we've been exploring that. I mean, I think the one thing that kind of positions us a little bit different is that we've always been a little bit, probably more old school, based on long-term relationship type of real estate to start with. So,
Yeah.
even when we launch a project, we never have the several hundred people in the sales center.
Right.
That type of, that's not really in our playbook ever. Ever since we've kind of been selling here in Toronto, we've really been based on a loyalty kind of system. Like, if you've been selling a lot for us, obviously you'll get first opportunity. But we don't. We never needed the focused on the 1,200 person, really nice spread, great food and wine type of scenario. That's never been our style. So for
Right.
us, it's kind of in some ways, it's not as challenging for us, I guess, to pivot, because it's actually quite
Yeah.
quite the route to our, it's kind of our true colors anyways, in
Yeah.
terms of this scenario. The only difference is, um, like I said, just making sure technology is the same, and just picking what makes sense, because obviously there's a lot of VR, there's a lot of videos, there's a lot of options out there, but also making sure that those things are, you can actually utilize them to sell.
Yeah.
Because I think there's all those things are great words and great products. There's some really cool stuff out there, but sometimes it doesn't work for everything. And I think that's the trying to be able to filter that through and work through that technology. I mean, there's one thing that we're working on a website that I'm hoping, or I'm assuming it will pick up in the world, is that we're adding a something that you can pick your floor plans, your renderings, all the different components for Sky Tower, and then you can make your own PDF. Like, you're basically making your own brochure, selecting the things that you're looking for. So
So
I think
kind of
that's
like the build your own shoe thing on Nike or whatever, like where you
yeah.
where
So
you
so we
make your car.
yeah. So I was kind of in that discussion at the beginning of the year already, going, hey, this is kind of, I see that as a new way of doing things, and then all of a sudden we had to kind of get in there and actually make it a live thing. But I think it's great for I think the person that's trying to convince their parents that this is a good purchase, or
Yeah.
go towards for some real estate agents out there that need to kind of you know really cater to their clients. So I think for me, it's I think we're now just becoming more of a kind of a bespoke type of made to measure type of
Yeah.
developer versus just generic off the rack fits everything. So yeah, I think we've had to change that type of mentality, but which I think is for the positive. I think I'm always excited about new tools and
That's
new things, and for us, I think that's going to kind of be the new wave of how we're going to do things, because right now I can't really get a big brochure to anyone.
right. Is it changing your cost structure much? Like, I guess it could actually technically be a reduction on your cost structure, because tech is I mean, obviously the upfront, the sunk cost of putting it all together, but
Yeah.
once it's running as an infrastructure, it could be almost less.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think 50% are still going to go to the sales centers and 50% still going to go online. So I think you're actually running two parallel systems,
Right.
which is might be a little bit more than before. Before, you might have maybe spent maybe 20% on your online stuff. But for us, we had to balance both of it. But also we have big projects. So some of our master plan communities, like you said, might take 5-10 years.
Yeah.
One Young, for example, I personally been working on the development process for 8 years. So
Seems like it's been rewarding though.
yeah, but it's exciting, and I think that's the behind the scenes work that needs to go in there to make evolve projects to get to that stage, and that's with a lot of our other projects. In Mississauga, I think we've been working on that for probably 10 years. So I mean, there's definitely a lot of energy that goes into it, but obviously, going through that community and listening to people, the residents in there, it's a pretty rewarding scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it would be. Um, on I guess we will kind of jump back to the script. We did get a little bit. That was really nice dialogue. I really enjoyed that. And I guess the big thing that a lot of people want to try and extract value from this is sort of like beyond. I think most can read between the lines about the things that you're doing to adapt, and I think that's shed a lot of great insight. But is there anything that you're directly telling to, I know you do like a lot of work with ULI and a bunch of groups in the industry, that if you were talking to a young person in the industry who hadn't really dealt with this, like you had mentioned that in 2008 that's when you were starting at Pinnacle. What kind of advice do you find yourself giving to people about how to get through this and and deal with the challenges that we're seeing in this industry right now?
Well, I think I mean, I think the industry, I mean, real estate itself is a very long-term industry. So I think that's part of the the initial part of it, is understanding that it's always something that we're supposed to go through peaks and valleys. That's just part of any chart you ever seen on the industry. But I think there's a lot of components to it, and I think a lot of times, we call it an old school industry, but it's a very complex industry now.
Yeah.
There's so many different components to it, and we're always trying to kind of paint it with one brush, and it's really difficult. And I think that's why you see even in the simplistic form, is like you'll see commercial agents, you see industrial agents, you'll see condos, resale, high, like everyone's branched out, even for lending and so forth. So it's way more complex than it is. And you know what, as much as maybe there's some components that might be struggling, there's other areas that are just booming. I
Yeah.
mean, you think of right now with the world just being online shoppers. I mean, think of industrial warehousing. It's you can't keep it off the you can't keep it on the shelves
Yeah.
versus maybe everyone else is kind of a little bit in the pause because a resale agent might not be able to do an open house or bring someone through a building, but
Mm.
we all go through those challenges and those waves. And I think that's the thing is you got to be patient. I think we're trying to I think a lot of people are trying to like outthink what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are like 15 steps ahead. The
Yeah.
problem is that they don't know what step one is yet.
Yeah.
So I think that it's being calm and seeing what's kind of happening in front of you. You gotta like driving through like a dust up on a racetrack. You gotta let things clear before you kind of go through, right? It's you've watched enough movies where that
Yeah.
if you're just if you don't be patient, you're gonna get yourself hurt. And I think that's I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to kind of go, hey, let's take a step back. Yes, we might need to change how we do things, but really it's really just a timeout. Like
Yeah.
that's really what we bought ourselves,
Yeah.
is a timeout to kind of either you can make the most of it or you can kind of make it doom and gloom. And
Yeah.
but I don't see it as a doom and gloom scenario. We've changed the way we do things, but
Yeah.
I think we've never had to do it. And I think the great thing is that it's collective. It's
Yeah.
not just Toronto centric or only in Canada. It's around the world. And
Yeah.
I think that makes it a lot more socially acceptable. You're not trying to explain to someone overseas what HST is,
Yeah.
or this politician changed this.
Yeah.
This is something that it's something that a global phenomenon that everyone understands, which
Yeah.
even for us is different than SARS.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's you really hit the nail on the head there. I think with the two pieces that you know, and that's the first one would be sort of my objective for this podcast, which is that there are so many different specializations and niches within the industry that need to be examined through their own lens. Like, and the industrial side would be a good example. Like, there's a lot of funds that are so bullish on this concept of repatriation of supply chains, which I don't really it's too political for me to even guess whether or not that's going to happen. But industrial is as strong as ever, and that's just one example. And then the other piece that you mentioned is that we're all in this together. It's like the first time ever, I would say, that globally we're facing a challenge together. And I think that sort of cuts the doom and gloom a little bit, because it's actually been so far quite remarkable how much people have come together to solve a lot of these problems. And I actually I was a bit of a cynic prior to this. Maybe not a bit. I was a lot of a cynic prior to this, and I found that actually, like, almost just really really surprised and happy to see the way that things have progressed. So I mean, that's been nice. Um, I do want to be mindful of your time. So I guess the two final things is, one, is there anything else that you wanted to add that we didn't get to? And then two, is there somewhere that people can reach you if they want to, discuss the developments that you're working on, or how to get their hands on a unit, or if they want to pitch you some VR technology or something like that?
Yeah, I think the only thing we also need to remember is also construction has actually been, for the most part, going, working towards, working since this whole thing happened. So, for us, we have 4 full construction sites that are in full construction. So even though maybe some things in the world pause, something that's going beside it is still moving. Obviously, not probably the same efficiency as I guess we're used to, but like for us, like we have a building moving in this fall, and we're excited about that. But it's a great opportunity for people. But then you know I have construction at all different stages, and we're soon going to we have equipment on site to start Sky Tower as well. And so I think that's a just even just even just for for Pinnacle, you got to remember that there's projects from all different cycles. I have projects going in from this year, next year,
Yeah.
built for 5 years from now. Like there's a lot of different opportunities. So I mean, it's hard to just make a comment like, oh, sales is down
Yeah.
or sales is this. Why are people buying? Like there's different needs and so forth. You could be that person that's like, okay, I'm going to be working from home now. I need a bigger space, or I need to leave my parents' house. I need my own space.
Yeah.
There's a lot of drivers that are going to be probably current, and even for us, we've actually had several sales of large units because people from outside the GTA that just kind of said, hey, you know what? If this ever happens again, I don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere with
Right.
nothing around me. I rather be, you know, somewhere with where the action is. At least I can get things delivered, food delivered to me, all those components. So it's been quite interesting. Like, it's been pretty eye opening how people have used this to kind of manage their kind of life dynamics. But yeah, we've seen several couples that have moved in from outside the GTA that I would never really expect to make a purchase like that at this time. And that's like Cambridge, Peterborough, like places that you probably don't see that many deals from. And but for people to move in, not to
That's that's
just
wild
for
to me.
investment,
I would have
you know.
assumed it would have been the exact opposite.
Yeah, so to me, it's quite interesting, and I think that's where people need to go. Everyone's going to kind of write their own story, and I think that's the great thing about being close to the sales process, is seeing that you know everyone has their own story. Whether it's investing for their kids, whether it's you know for the future, or when my kids move out, I want to move down there. Everyone has a different philosophy, so we can't really just assume one general thread will change everyone. And I think that's important to remember, because as we all judge how the market's going to come out of this, it's everything's a little bit different. Everything has a different reason to purchase. And it's yes, it is a big investment regardless, but there's also lots of people that were in stocks in different investment vehicles that maybe scared them as well. And
Yeah.
it's going to happen. And but yeah, I'm definitely obviously happy to chat. And people can reach me on my email, on LinkedIn, but I'm pretty active on those to keep an eye out on things. And but right now it's a great time. And I think sales is it's a really exciting time for sales, because
I agree.
now you truly see who can sell.
Yeah, you get to prove your worth. I agree with that for
and
sure.
and and that's a great thing, because that's what gives me the most confidence, is that I know my team can sell,
Yeah.
and provide the great service that people need at this time. And I think those are kind of the most critical components when you go back to the basics of the industry. And I think sometimes we kind of lose that, because we've kind of been in a really good hot streak for a long time, and you forget
Yeah,
the
it's,
basics.
for sure. It's the same as the resale market, right? Like, I mean, in the past, other than maybe for a couple months in 2017 there, but in the past 5 years, all you needed to know how to do was, get a property on MLS and it would sell itself, right? And I think that, we're in for some short-term headwinds, and especially in the resale market. And I do think it'll be a little bit Darwinistic to a lot of the people who just, and I think that it could very well be that way in pre-construction as well, right? I think that's healthy though, realistically. Like, it could help us get to a market where the majority of players belong there and earn their keep, right?
Yeah, it's a healthy one. I don't think it's a, like I said, I don't think it's a negative thing. I think it's a great thing of going, hey, you know what? Maybe the way that the market was selling is maybe it wasn't the right way, and
Yeah.
now we can maybe better pair people to the product they're actually looking for,
Yeah.
instead of just buying product in general,
Yeah.
buying product they're actually looking for, and also making sure that they're financially sound to actually buy the product. I mean, I think there's a general conception that everyone has money.
Right.
So I'll hear that quite often from when people come to the sales center, like, well, my client has money. Well, that's like your assumption of everyone. Like, everyone that drives a decent looking car, or has a nice handbag, that
Right.
doesn't mean that to get changed. Is that we all have a role to qualify our clients, and we also need to make sure that we're not putting them in a situation that will be financially stressful. And just assuming everyone is financially well off is a difficult I think it's a dangerous assumption. And I think now, after what's happened the last 2 months with whatever industry the person is in, maybe it's fair to ask that question now.
Yeah. Well, especially knowing that, basically the whole social media, like Instagram phenomenon, and the way that we live in general is, by design to make ourselves appear as wealthy as possible. So probably the handbag and the nice car thing is definitely probably not a good indicator of net worth at most times.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
okay. Well, I really appreciate your insight. It's been refreshingly positive dialogue about the way that you see things, and I would tend to agree on most points. So I really appreciate your time, and I think you've added a lot of value to myself and to others, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys are. I've been following One Young quite a bit, and I'm really really excited to see that project take shape. So
Well, we're the Prestige right now is we're just on the seventh floor now, so it's if you haven't been down here, it's definitely going up quite well, and you're starting to see the shape of a lot of things that we've built. You know, whether the community center or the outdoor terrace, you can actually see it when you drive by now, and
nice,
soon we'll be starting work on Sky Tower as well. We were mobilizing until they shut down all sites without above grade
right?
permits, so we were kind of we had to stop our process, but we just had to work on getting it remobilized. But
Right.
the site looks it's changed a lot, obviously from when we purchased it and when it was a parking lot,
Yeah.
and now it's up to 7 stories. So it's it's exciting to see. And thank you very much for having me today. It's
Yeah, my
exciting
pleasure. I appreciate your
to
time.
talk, and those are I think you're doing a great thing and providing great opportunities for people, because I think people need. I think for everyone's it's like a buffet. You got to keep on grabbing things from and trying as much things as possible, and
Yeah.
the things you like, you kind of keep on going back to, and I
Yeah.
think it's important for all of us to kind of do that.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thanks again for your time.
Great.
I really appreciate it.
Okay,
I'll get this
my
up on
pleasure. You
LinkedIn
take
right
care.
away. Okay. Thanks, man.
Take care. Bye.